you for joining me, Tershia on Tershia Talks Trafficking, where I expose exploitation and human trafficking. Human trafficking, also known as trafficking in persons, is the exploitation of people's vulnerabilities, and it takes place when a person is either tricked, coerced, or manipulated for the use of their body or for their labor. According to our South African legislation, it indicates that transportation is not a prerequisite for trafficking to take place. A person can be trafficked and exploited without being transported. A person's vulnerabilities can be exploited without having to transport them. Today, I'm very excited to speak to you briefly about the topic of prostitution. I would like to go into more detail in a later episode, but let's start by touching on prostitution. I would also like to direct your attention to an incredible organization that works with prostituted persons by the name of Brave to Love, founded by Emma van der Walt. And some of the information that I'll be sharing with you today comes directly from her. So we always have to remember, when it comes to prostitution, demand always needs to equal the supply. And that is why prostitution fuels human trafficking. Many are actually groomed into prostitution by female friends, which is a very important and interesting stat. And we also know in South Africa that the most successful sex trafficking rings are actually run by females. It is also not always addiction that leads to prostitution. Very important for us to remember that. A couple of years ago, we had a serious battle with our government, who is wanting to fully decriminalize prostitution. And we praise God that that legislation did not go through, but we are expecting a reoccurrence of the fight again. So decriminalizing or fully decriminalizing prostitution will not take the shame away. Every woman we see in prostitution has her own monster. According to Emma, especially working directly with many of these women and prostituted people. And some of the monsters are clients that rape these women. And also we need to remember that sex buyers do not want to be known. They want to stay anonymous. We need to remember this. We know that currently prostitution is illegal in South Africa. However, unfortunately, we see that the prostituted persons are the ones that are being targeted by law enforcement instead of the sex buyers. And the sex buyers are actually the problem. Without the sex buyers or the demands, there does not have to be a supply. So we know from people who work on the ground that organized crime takes place in each and every single brothel in South Africa. And when it comes to women who stay in prostitution, they actually get more and more involved in illegal activity. We also see that crystal meth is very common in prostitution because it's an upper drug and it enhances sexual sensation. And also when it comes to the owners of these brothels, the majority owners and managers are foreigners. Many of them come from Bosnia, from Russia, from China, and many are Thai men and women, and some are Zimbabwean females. Very interesting stats, and these are not government stats. These are NGO stats, people that work on the ground and whose hearts are fully in the work. There are also some upper class, if you want to call it that, in inverted commas, brothels that have doctors as well as psychologists available. That says a lot about this so-called job. Prostitution is a form of slavery. When it comes to women, unfortunately, women absorb most of the risk in sex, and we always have to remember this. This is obviously a biological and scientific fact. And prostitution is unfortunately the last unrecognized form of sexual abuse. Money is the cruelest part of the abuse for many, with many of those who are trapped in prostitution or who are survivors of prostitution. They say the money is the worst part for them. When they get paid, they feel like they are merely an object. And also, if you think about it, where are the women who had options and chose to go into prostitution? This is a very interesting argument, and I am very open in having discussions around this topic. And my strong conviction is, from what I've seen, what I've experienced, from the number of professional individuals and organizations that are part of the National Freedom Network, including survivors of prostitution, we see that those who go into prostitution, they are either in a situation where they believe they have no other option. We are talking about the majority, and then they are either trafficked or they don't see any other option. So once again, I will repeat, where are the women who had options and chose to go into prostitution? We need to remember that many of those who go into prostitution are either tricked into it or they are forced into it, either by trafficking or by their circumstance. And also, where will a prostituted person be in 20 years? These are merely factors that I'm asking and questions that I am raising, especially for those who believe that prostitution is work. There's also arguments such as, I'm doing what I want with my body. No. As Emma so eloquently said before, others are doing what they want with your body. Men with dangerous fetishes also seek out prostituted persons, because remember, in many cases, it is about power. And also, we have to remember, please, it is so much easier to get into prostitution, and it is much harder to get out of prostitution. So this discussion is a mere opening basics with regards to prostitution and the prostitution system. And my aim is merely to whet your appetite in wanting to learn more about this topic. I am going to go into a lot more detail in next episodes, but for now, I hope that some of these facts that I've given you has actually made you think a bit more about where you possibly stand on this topic. I would like to share with you now a story that comes by Stories of Living Hope, and it is written by an anonymous individual who calls herself Alice. And it's entitled, I Got a Job. It's about decriminalization of prostitution. I got a job, she said, voice trembling like she was almost proud. She wanted to be proud. After months of handing out CVs, skipping meals, so her children didn't have to, waking up to the sound of eviction threats and her own heartbeat in her ears. This felt like something. It was decriminalized now. They called it progress. No more hiding. You're protected, empowered. That's what the field worker told her, handing her a form with her name printed neatly at the top and a checkbox next to self-employed. It sounded like owning a business, like something her daughter could one day brag about. She signed. The next time, she went silent. The second time, she smiled as she'd learned to float outside her body. By the fifth time, she stopped counting. Some left her bruised. Some left her bleeding. One left her unconscious in a lodge room while her phone buzzed with her child's missed calls. Her ribs never healed quite right after a client shoved her off her bed for talking too much. Her back spasmed for weeks after another one told her he liked a little resistance. She still doesn't know what was in the drink the man handed her. That night she woke up on the bathroom floor. But it was work. They said it was decent. But what she calls work, others would call workplace harassment. She started losing parts of herself in pieces. First her appetite, then her money. Was she losing her mind or just surviving? Shutting down some part of her brain to cut out trauma, like war veterans do. Joy vanished quietly, like someone slipping out the back door. Her laughter got caught in her throat and never came back. And then the physical pain. Everything ached, inside and out. She wasn't willing to face the nurses who asked all the same personal questions that made her feel stupid when she answered truthfully. Maybe it was time to start popping pills or smoking something just to get through the days. Or maybe she should be stronger, face it all like the others do. I am a woman, a strong, independent woman. It's my life, my choices, my body, my rules. I am empowered. Strong is beautiful. I can do this. Every morning she stared in the mirror and met eyes that didn't belong to her. There was someone inside her, quiet, aching, curled up in the corner of her chest, dying slowly, politely, but still, she worked. Still, she paid taxes. Still, she showed up. The clinic knew her name. The system ticked its boxes. And the politicians slept soundly at night. Enforcement couldn't arrest her for soliciting anything anymore. So some found other reasons: possession, loitering, disturbing the peace. True or false, the corrupt didn't care. One picked her up and handcuffed for no other reason than to use her. Promises of forgetting the paperwork if she played along, and then didn't pay a cent. That was her job now, wasn't it? The system called it work. The law called it progress. The police called it nothing at all. At a friend's birthday one night, she wore a borrowed dress and her best attempt at being normal. Someone asked the dreaded question, "So, what do you do for a living?" She hesitated, smiled, swallowed. "I work for myself." "Oh, nice. What kind of work?" And she said it quietly, painfully. The conversation froze. A woman across the table raised her eyebrows. A man looked down at his drink like it just spoiled. Someone cleared their throat and changed the subject. Later, she heard the whispers. "That's what she does now? I mean, I guess it's legal, but wouldn't want her around my husband. Poor kids." She left early. That night, curled under a fraying blanket while her daughter slept with a hand on her arm, she understood something bitter. The world had only decriminalized her pain. It hadn't humanized her. It had turned her into a symbol, a slogan, a checkbox. She could work now, but she could not belong. Selling her body was accepted, but her life was still forbidden. And in the space between who she used to be and what she had become, something had died. Loudly, then quietly, then completely. But no one came to the funeral, because this, they said, was decent work. Thank you once again for joining me, Tershia de Klerk, for Tershia Talks Trafficking. And please remember our National Human Trafficking Hotline number, 0800 222 777. Missing Children South Africa, 072 Missing or 072 647 7464. The Joseph Movement WhatsApp line, 082 766 9870. You can also be part of our Combat Human Trafficking WhatsApp group. Simply send us a WhatsApp and ask us to be added. That number again, 082 766 9870. And to book a talk, presentation or workshop with me, please visit tershiatalks.co.za or email me on tershia@tershiatalks.co.za. Thank you for joining me for Tershia Talks Trafficking, here to help expose exploitation. And remember, if you suspect something, say something.